Hey guys and girls, this is episode 6 of the Landcruiser project build, and I will be removing and inspecting a rear solid axle and a front freewheel manual locking hub. With penetrating fluid applied, I start with the flange nuts. I loosen them to the end of the studs, and then I must address the tapered cone washers. Using this 16-ounce hammer, I strike the lugs and outside of the axle flange, with each blow creating percussion. Next, I use this steel spike to strike the end of the flange studs, and this will directly shock the cone washers. With the flange nuts a few turns in from the end of the studs, I strike them directly. It's important to leave the nut on because if the thread becomes damaged, it can be recut by removing the nut. Tapered cone washers can be stubborn, but the combined percussion of these blows will eventually shock and dislodge them. It's actually recommended that you use a brass hammer, punch or drift, but this gives you an idea of what you can do in a remote location with limited tools available. Now I remove the flange nuts, flat washers and dislodged tapered washers. I remove the last stubborn cone washers by inserting this flat blade screwdriver into the split, then work them loose from the flange studs. Next, I insert these short bolts into the threaded axle flange holes. They are size M8 with a thread pitch of 1.25mm. I tighten these bolts a few turns, alternating between the two, until the flange has been dislodged from the hub and the gasket seal has been broken. It's important to lift this side of the diff higher than the other because diff oil can leak out of the hub once the seal is broken. I slide out the axle shaft and this gives me access to the lock nut behind it. If this is removed, the entire hub assembly can be torn down. I loosen the retaining screws, check the lock nut is tight and the wheel bearings have enough free play, inspect the oil seal, then reinstall the retaining screws. I am using this general purpose grease to pack the wheel hub and lubricate the oil seal before reinstalling the axle shaft. If there is enough interest, I'll make a rear solid axle hub rebuild video covering bearings, races and oil seals. With the back of the axle flange clean, I apply gasket sealant, and when reinstalling the shaft, it's important the face of the hub is also clean to create the best seal. I locate the flange pin, then rotate the hub to engage the shaft splines into the diff center. I secure the axle by reinstalling the tapered cone washers, flat washers and nuts, and while tightening in opposing pairs, I'm careful not to over tighten and snap the flange studs. Now I move on to the manual locking hub, starting with loosening the cover mounting bolts, then selecting the free position with the control handle. If the lock position is selected, the clutch can become separated and stuck in the freewheel hub body. It will have to be removed and the assembly put back together. With the hub body cleaned, I repack it with this general purpose grease. Before reinstalling the clutch assembly, I check that it functions correctly and that the freewheeling position is selected. I apply grease to the clutch, clean all gasket surfaces, then reinstall the cover into the hub body. I reinstall the mounting bolts by tightening opposing pairs while being careful not to over tighten. Part 2 will cover manual locking hubs in more detail. Like, subscribe, I'll catch you later.